Hello, and thanks for tuning in. You are listening to a special deep dive episode on Building Fortunes Radio and the Humongous Radio Network. In this deep dive review, we will focus on the education, experience, and opinions of reputable people and sources on Building Fortunes Radio. Peter Mingils hosts the original shows with distinguished special guests, or research, news, and developments. These podcasts are so good, they are published everywhere. From highly specialized sites such as MLM.news and DirectSelling.news to the Building Fortunes Radio and Humongous Radio networks, and even on Amazon's Audible, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Humongous.com is a corporate sponsor, and Humongous promotes each radio show, and Deep Dive is educational, motivational, and inspirational for the Building Fortunes Radio and Humongous Radio listening audience. Check out the music link and the deep dive review links as they add a unique feature worth your time and enjoyment. If you have questions or want to host a show on the Humongous Network, call or text Peter Mingils on 386-864-1928. Humongous. It's really big. Now on to our deep dive review. Let's get started.
You know, when you picture that classic American retirement, it's usually painted like this pristine, static postcard.
Oh, yeah. Very idyllic.
Like, you hit 65, they hand you a gold watch, you move to a porch somewhere, and that financial engine you built up for 40 years just kind of quietly hums in the background.
Right. You're supposed to be done. It's the grand finale of the whole industrial conveyor belt.
Exactly.
The labor is entirely in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
And you're just, coasting on what you've accumulated.
But I want to take that postcard today and just throw it in the shredder.
I love it. Let's do it.
Because when you look at the actual economic landscape for retirees right now, that whole narrative is really fracturing. And that brings us to the mission of today's deep dive. We are exploring this fascinating intersection of post-retirement reinvention, macroeconomic anxiety, and get this modern digital entrepreneurship.
Which sounds like a lot, but we have a really grounded source for this.
We do. To dig into this, we're pulling from the premiere broadcast of the Jeff Johnson radio show.
And this show is a perfect, microcosm for this much larger demographic shift we're seeing across the country.
It really is. And the show operates on this core philosophy encapsulated in their tagline, which is people telling people.
Right. And while Jeff Johnson hosts it, the foundational context here is that Building Fortunes Radio, which is hosted by Peter Mingils, actually helps produce and distribute the show with Jeff.
Yeah, and we have to talk about the syndication footprint they've built for this message because it is frankly massive.
Oh, it's everywhere.
Like, these broadcasts are published on Building Fortunes Radio and the Humongous Radio Network, but they're also rebroadcast on Amazon Music, Amazon Audible, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio.
Plus, they're pumping it all out on YouTube and Facebook now, too.
It's this colossal multi-platform megaphone for a guy who, on paper, is supposed to be sitting quietly on that porch we talked about.
It's incredible leverage.
And before we get totally lost in the mechanics of, how they built that megaphone, I want to mention right up top, if you're listening to this deep dive and you find yourself interested in how Jeff operates, or you actually want to work with him, you can call him directly.
Which is pretty rare to have that direct line.
Definitely. His number is 801-494-9181. We'll drop that again later, but I want to make sure you have it as a resource. Because the real hook of this source material, the thing that makes this entire setup so strange and fascinating, is Jeff's background.
Yeah, we have to look at his history to really understand the gravity of this current pivot he's making.
Because the shift in his life priorities is just stark.
It really is. So, Jeff started out like a lot of folks, right? He went to college for a bit, but then he met a young woman, they got married, and his entire worldview just snapped into a completely different focus.
Yeah, he says in the broadcast that his priority went from, quote, paying tuition to buying beans and starting a family.
Which is such a visceral way to describe taking on those heavy responsibilities of adulthood.
Buying beans.
Right. You abandon the abstract, long-term academic investment because you have this immediate survival and provision staring you right in the face.
And for Jeff, providing meant laying carpet. And he did it for 40 straight years.
40 years.
I just want to pause on that because I think people hear 40 years of physical labor and it just washes over them as a generic statistic.
Yeah, they don't feel the weight of it.
But Peter Mingils, his co-host, brings some great perspective here. Peter used to sell Electrolux vacuums, so he was in these homes working right alongside carpet installers, and he notes the brutal physical toll this specific job takes on a human body.
The mechanics of laying carpet are uniquely punishing. I mean, Peter highlights the bad knees, the ruined backs.
You're crawling all day.
Exactly. You are constantly on the floor using your own joints as hammers, basically, to stretch these heavy abrasive materials.
Just the thought of it.
And you're dealing with difficult contractors. Plus, economically, you're trapped in this constant price battle with competitors. It's an industry that often just races to the bottom in terms of pricing, while pushing workers to their absolute physical limits just to maintain a margin.
It's like an extreme endurance sport, but you have to do it every day to eat. I can't even fathom the grit required to survive that for 4 decades.
But he did survive it.
He did. And he established several sources of retirement income over those 40 years, which he describes on the show as very adequate. So he gets to the finish line. He's retired.
He made it.
Right? And then he makes this massive lifestyle shift. He moves away from his longtime home in Utah, leaving behind a city with hundreds of thousands of people, and relocates to a 100-acre farm in rural Missouri.
And the motivation for that move is so deeply rooted in family. He relocated specifically to live right across the yard from his son, his daughter-in-law, and 5 of his youngest grandchildren.
Including a 2-month-old baby. He talks about just walking across the yard for dinner. I mean, it's the dream, right? And here is where I really have to push back on the whole premise of this radio show. If Jeff laid carpet for 40 years, lived sensibly, established multiple streams of adequate income, and got this idyllic, isolated farm to be with his grandkids, why on earth is he launching a global broadcasting and networking business?
It seems counterintuitive.
Yeah. The math should be on his side. It almost feels like a contradiction. Like, why not just rest?
Because the math isn't static.
Mm-hmm.
The goalposts are moving. And that's the macroeconomic reality check that Jeff and honestly millions of other retirees are waking up to right now.
It's not about the math of his past, though.
Exactly. It's about the math of his future.
Yeah.
He's reacting to this like trifecta of economic anxieties. You've got inflation, the instability of Social Security, and extreme market volatility.
Okay, let's unpack the inflation piece first, because Jeff is very explicit on the show that he does not consider inflation to be, quote, trivial.
No, not at all.
Wow. But, we hear about inflation all the time on the news. How is it fundamentally different for a retiree on a farm versus, say, a 30-year-old in a city?
Well, for a 30-year-old, inflation is an annoyance, right? But it can theoretically be offset by asking for a raise or switching companies to bump your salary.
You can't earn it.
Right. But for a retiree on a fixed income, inflation acts as this compounding invisible tax.
Yeah.
Jeff has this profound fear that what constitutes an adequate income today simply won't buy the same amount of groceries or healthcare or property tax in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
When you aren't actively selling your labor anymore, you have literally no mechanism to negotiate against inflation.
That is a terrifying position to be in. You cross the finish line, but the finish line just keeps moving further away every single month.
Exactly.
And then you add the Social Security anxiety on top of it. Peter Mingils echoes this fear heavily on the broadcast. Peter is 64, and he actually admits that he took his Social Security benefits early.
Which, as we know, runs counter to almost all conventional financial advice.
Right. Every financial planner says, wait. Usually, the golden rule is to wait until you're at least 67 or even 70 to maximize that monthly payout. So what is Peter's logic for pulling the trigger early?
It comes down to a really harsh break-even analysis, mixed with, frankly, a lack of institutional trust.
Okay.
Peter points to these estimates, suggesting that the Social Security system's trust funds could be depleted between 2027 and 2032.
That's right around the corner.
It is. Now, that doesn't mean payouts go to absolute zero, but it could mean significant mandatory cuts to benefits. So Peter did the math for his own life. He realized that if he waited to get the higher monthly amount, he would have to live to be 74 just to reach the break-even point.
Wait, break even at 74?
Yeah. That's the point where the delayed, larger checks finally eclipse the total amount he would have collected by just taking the smaller checks starting at 62.
Wow. So he's looking at the calendar, looking at 2032 approaching rapidly and thinking, why am I waiting to break even at 74 on a system that might be insolvent by the time I get there?
Exactly. He literally says on the show, first, he doesn't know if he'll be around, and second, he doesn't know if the money will be around.
That completely shatters that safe, predictable postcard image of retirement we started with. The foundational safety net is just frayed.
And Peter goes even further, dismantling the other major pillar of retirement planning, which is the stock market.
Yeah, this part of the source material really stood out to me. He argues that the current U.S. market is a massive bubble, and he specifically points the finger at the AI industry and data centers.
Right.
He claims they are ballooning this bubble and that their underlying fiscal responsibility is just a giant question mark. Now, whether you, the listener, buy into his specific market analysis or not, how does that sentiment translate into actionable fear for someone like Jeff?
Well, it's all about something called sequence of returns risk.
Okay, what's that?
When you are 30 and the market crashes, you don't care. You just keep buying index funds at a discount.
Stocks are on sale.
Right. But when you are in your 60s and you're actively drawing down your retirement accounts just to buy groceries, a volatile market crash can permanently cripple your portfolio.
Oh, because you're forced to sell at the bottom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If tech stocks and AI data centers take a huge dip, the broader index funds that retirees rely on will sink. You have to sell shares at a loss to survive, which means those shares aren't there to recover when the market eventually bounces back.
So to summarize this perfect storm, you can't rely on your fixed income because inflation is eating it. You can't rely entirely on the government because Social Security might face cuts. And you can't rely on the market because a sudden correction could wipe out your principal.
Precisely. Which brings us back to your original question about Jeff.
Why are you starting a business?
Yes, he has to augment his income to stay ahead of this math for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
But he's older, his knees are shot from 40 years of carpet laying, and he is geographically isolated on a farm in Missouri.
Yeah, going back to physical labor is physically impossible.
And getting a traditional corporate job in rural Missouri isn't exactly feasible either.
Which leads him to this specific solution. A home-based network marketing business that only requires a phone and an internet connection.
Yeah.
But I have to say, looking at Jeff's profile, a guy who spent 4 decades doing solitary, heads-down, brutal manual labor, pivoting into highly social, vulnerable network marketing in his 60s seems like a massive psychological leap.
It is an enormous leap. And what's fascinating is Jeff's transparency about that exact psychological hurdle.
Oh, yeah?
He admits on the broadcast that he had actually been attracted to the network marketing model for 40 years. He knew the math behind it. But he confesses that he used to be too timid. He says he spent decades playing small.
It's such a striking admission. I mean, you can be tough enough to haul carpet up flights of stairs for 40 years dealing with aggressive contractors, but still be completely intimidated by the vulnerability of picking up a phone and pitching a business idea.
Well, the fear of social rejection is a totally different beast than physical exhaustion.
So true.
But the macroeconomic pressure we just discussed finally outweighed that timidity. From the comfort of his farm, he is now fully engaged. And he's managing that psychological leap by using a very structured mentorship model.
Okay.
He isn't just telling people to go out and sell. He outlines a highly accessible 3-step plan for anyone who wants to work with him in this business.
Let's get into the mechanics of this, because their tagline is people telling people. That implies a specific type of geometric scaling. But if I'm joining Jeff's team, what does this 3-step plan actually look like?
So step 1 is simply watch. Jeff says he will build his business right in front of new team members. They don't just get a PDF manual. They get to literally watch and learn exactly what he says, how he handles objections, and what his daily workflow looks like.
That's great. And then comes step 2, copy.
Right.
Once you've watched his process, you replicate that exact daily system yourself. And step 3 is commit. He explicitly tells people they need to stick with this system for a year.
And I appreciate that he's very upfront that this is not a lottery ticket. It takes actual time and labor.
Yeah, he equates it to opening a traditional brick-and-mortar business, like a restaurant. You can't just open the doors on the random days you feel motivated.
No, you have to open for business every single day, regardless of your mood.
It actually reminds me of an old-school blacksmith apprenticeship, but applied to a digital franchise model.
Oh, I like that.
Right. If you buy a fast food franchise, you don't invent the menu or the marketing. You are handed a massive operational playbook. The franchisor says, put the fryers here, say this at the drive-thru, and run this promotion. Jeff is basically acting as the franchisor. He's saying, watch how I run my unit, copy my exact operational playbook, and commit to running your unit every day.
That's a really strong way to look at it. It removes the guesswork, and the underlying mechanism of this model relies entirely on network leverage. It's not about one person trying to sell 1,000 products. It's the literal execution of people telling people. you talk to a few people who talk to a few people who talk to a few people. Over time, that compounding network effect accrues hundreds or thousands of customers within the organization.
And Jeff makes a point to emphasize the structural fairness here. There is no corporate glass ceiling. Everyone starts at the exact same bottom level with the same playbook. But if you choose to put in the actual work, you can build a network that reaches the very top of the compensation structure.
He also stresses how inclusive the system is. He asserts that if you have the basic cognitive ability to drive a car or operate a smartphone, you can learn his daily system.
He explicitly notes that a teenager could learn these skills.
Exactly. It's tailor-made for retirees, people on disability, stay-at-home parents, anyone who needs extreme flexibility but wants to participate in an entrepreneurial system.
Okay, I understand the franchise analogy, and I understand the geometric math of network marketing. But here is the giant, glaring problem I see with Jeff's plan.
Lay it on me.
A mentorship model is great. It's fantastic that he wants to be the master franchiser for his team. But to leverage the people telling people concept to actually spark that geometric growth, you need to find initial people to talk to.
Yes.
Jeff is sitting on an isolated farm in Missouri. His daily foot traffic consists of his 5 grandkids and some livestock. How does a guy in the middle of nowhere overcome the fundamental bottleneck of networking, which is trust and reach?
That is the pivotal question, and it's exactly why the partnership with Peter Mingils is the ultimate game changer here. Jeff isn't just relying on his local Missouri network. He is utilizing the massive media infrastructure of Building Fortunes Radio to scale his home-based business globally.
Okay, so this is where those syndication platforms we mentioned earlier become the actual engine of the business.
Exactly. Peter and Jeff aren't just recording a polite interview for fun. Peter explicitly notes on the broadcast that they are playfully conspiring to help Jeff's team succeed.
Playfully conspiring, that is the perfect phrase for it.
It really is. It's a strategic, symbiotic alliance. By putting the Jeff Johnson radio show on Building Fortunes Radio and the Humongous Radio Network, and then pushing it out to Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and Facebook, Jeff is solving the reach problem instantly.
Wow.
He is providing his team with incredible technological leverage.
It's what media analysts call the halo effect. Like, if Jeff just called up a stranger from his farm, the immediate reaction is skepticism.
Sure, who is this guy?
Right. But when someone hears Jeff on a podcast on Spotify or watches a well-produced broadcast on YouTube, he instantly goes from a guy trying to recruit me to a featured expert with a global broadcast platform. The medium validates his message before he even gets on a phone call.
Precisely. The broadcast acts as a proxy for trust.
Yeah.
And Peter points out that anyone who joins Jeff's business benefits directly from this media infrastructure. You aren't just joining an isolated retiree, you are plugging into a global media apparatus.
That's huge.
You get to leverage the hard work and financial investment of all these radio and streaming platforms to validate your own business efforts.
It's an incredible funnel. You hear the broadcast on Apple or Facebook, the halo effect establishes trust. You enter the 3-step mentorship program, and you learn how to duplicate that exact process. And again, to reiterate for you listening right now, if you want to test that funnel yourself or tap into this exact broadcast leverage, you can call Jeff Johnson directly at 801-494-9181.
And when you step back and analyze this entire strategy, it completely redefines our cultural concept of a home-based business.
How so?
Well, it is a highly evolved hybrid model now. Jeff is retaining the quiet, rural, family-first lifestyle, literally farming in Missouri, and seeing his grandkids run across the yard every day while simultaneously wielding a digital footprint as large as a corporate media entity.
He managed to trade the physical agony of laying carpet for the intellectual engagement of broadcasting and networking without sacrificing his physical location.
And most importantly, it addresses his macroeconomic fears head-on. By building a network that scales geometrically through media syndication, he is attempting to create an income stream that can theoretically outpace inflation, completely independent of whatever happens to the Social Security Trust Fund or the AI stock market bubble.
It's a brilliant structural pivot. So, looking at the big picture, we started this deep dive analyzing a single premiere episode of a radio show.
Right.
But what we really uncovered was a modern blueprint for financial survival. We track Jeff's journey from 4 decades of grueling, knee-destroying manual labor straight into the very real mathematical anxieties of inflation and failing traditional safety nets.
And ultimately, we saw him find a way to take control through a globally broadcasted, home-based mentorship model.
It's a remarkable transition, and I think it leaves us with something quite profound to consider regarding our own lives.
I agree. We have been so conditioned to view retirement as the absolute end of our working utility.
Yes, it's supposed to be the era of rest and withdrawal from the economic machine.
The gold watch on the porch. But looking at Jeff Johnson's reinvention, what if true retirement isn't about stopping work at all?
Okay, I like where you're going with this.
What if instead it's about graduating from laboring purely for your survival income to finally having the freedom and the digital tools to build a community and a legacy entirely on your own terms?
That is a powerful reframe. You step off the porch, you shred the postcard, and you start building something new. That is going to do it for today's deep dive. Thanks for listening.
Wow, thanks for tuning in. That was a really great deep dive. You just finished listening in to a special deep dive episode on Building Fortunes Radio and the Humongous Radio Networks. We hope you enjoyed it, learned a lot, and will share this with others important to you. In this deep dive review, we focused on the education, experience, and opinions of reputable people and sources on Building Fortunes Radio. Peter Mingils hosts the original shows with distinguished special guests, news, and developments. These podcasts are so good they are published everywhere, from highly specialized sites such as MLM.news and DirectSelling.news to the Building Fortunes Radio and Humongous Radio Networks, and also on Amazon Audible, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. We hope you share them with others so you can make a difference in their world. Our corporate sponsor is Humongous.com. Now you know why Humongous promotes that each radio show and deep dive is educational, motivational, and inspirational for the Building Fortunes radio listening audience. If you like these deep dives, make sure you check out the music link and the deep dive review links as they add a unique feature worth your time. If you have questions or want to host a show on the Humongous Network, call or text Peter Mingils on 3868-641928. Humongous. It's really big. Peter Mingils and I want to thank you for listening in to the deep dive. We wish you the success you deserve and are willing to work towards. Now, go make your world a better place.